Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to another episode of Warhammer Wednesday with me, Annie. Nice to see you all. Today I thought I would kind of cover off just some other kind of techniques I've been doing or learning using kind of different materials, and I thought we could discuss basing today. I'm currently working on some Tau models, and I've recently just kind of finished off some Tau drones, but I want to do something different with the base on them, just to make them a bit more effective. So my plan today was to share with you a wee bit regarding that process. When it comes to basing your models, obviously these were the clear plastic model bases, but they are currently coated white because I primed them whilst they were attached to it. Your normal base will look something like this, you know, black. So again, until you prime it, depending on what colour your primer is, this is what you can expect to see. Now, once you've finished painting your model, sometimes it's nice to give yourself like a nice looking base. You know, people are attracted to seeing bases and different types of textures, paint jobs, whatever it is you want to do. There is no right or wrong in my opinion. I think it's a good chance to get experimental and try something out. Obviously, if you're doing a specific chapter and you want to keep it themed for your chapter, that could play a big role as well. So if you're doing some sort of like chaos or alien race, you might want to experiment with something it's more themed towards that. If you're dealing with like something that's from like a marshy land or a dry desert land, then obviously that's the kind of base and you would want to incorporate in that as well. So yeah, lots of room for experimentation. I'll show you some of the models I've based to give you an idea of what I've done in the past. Okay, so as I've said, there is no right or wrong in my opinion, and it's really just more a case of how experimental you're feeling, how comfortable you feel by testing out new techniques. And there's a whole range of paints from companies like Games Workshop, who do the Citadel paints, that are technical paint. So yeah, as I was saying, like basically it's up to you how experimental you want to get, what different kinds of products you want to incorporate. Some of the technical paints, just by simply painting them on and leaving them to dry, will give a different sort of technique. Which I'll show you some of that as well. It's absolutely incredible how effective some of the paints and stuff are now that you can get. So let me show you some examples of what I've worked on. Ooh. So this one, for example, is simply painted. Okay, I've not put any basing material in here, but even with painting you can see that a completed base really makes a model more effective. Now this one's quite plain, to be honest, but I think the reason I stuck with a plain base because I didn't want to detract from the detail on this particular model. So I simply did a coat of paint in the bottom, and then I actually used a shade on top to give it that kind of different kind of technique rather than just plain paint. And I did the rim with Abaddon black as well. I always like to do black rims around my models again because they usually tend to make it stand out a bit more when they're like in your cabinet. Again, you can play about with this, you can get experimental, but for me I quite enjoy finishing it off like that. So that was purely just normal paint, ordinary paint, and no additional basing materials used on that one. This one, for example, again, is with a clear base because they're like the flying ones. These are the Tyrannid gargoyles. So I've just left it like that again because I'm happy with that and I don't want it to deter from the detail on my model. So again, if you want to leave them, you can. This one I've left that one. Now, when I was speaking about different sorts of technical paints, if you look closely at this one, it's my Demonette. If you see the base here, it looks a bit more textured and bumpy, and that's exactly what I've done. I've actually just based this model with a textured paint. Now it's likely to be white or brown or like fawn coloured. I'll show you my technical paints after this as well. And once that sets, once that dries, it's then up to you to paint it in the colour you want. So I then went for like a whitey blue scheme, and once I'd painted that I went and put like a wash over it as well to give the kind of effect of like all the different indents and stuff in that as well, so you can see all the different crevices in between the rough stuff that I've put on it kind of idea. So it's a really simple, easy effect to do, and it makes a world of difference for your models. Something as simple as play sand, for example. So again, for this particular model, I based my model in PVA glue. So it's a case of just putting something like PVA glue around all the areas that you want the sand to soak into. Then get just normal play sand, fill a tub. This one's maybe nearly the right size. Well, no, it would have done fine actually. So you would put your play sand in here, PVA glue on the base of your model, and then just dunk your model in. Shake off any excess and leave it to set and dry. And once you're happy that it's been fully dried, you can then paint it to your desired colour. So that's what I've done with this one. So again, it definitely adds to a better effect to have that texture in there, and just kind of completes it and makes it look more like it's from a different kind of land. So that's what I did for that ones. My scarabs, they were actually a technical paint as well. If you look closely, you can see it looks like a bunch of tiny little like cracks on it. So that paint just dries like that. It's a paint that you coat on, and once you leave it to dry, it goes into individual cracks all by itself. And again, once that had dried and set, I then went and painted on top of it to kind of preserve it, and then put a wash on top to darken some bits and really highlight all the broken cracks in there as well. The bikes here I did, the Outriders, what I did here again was just played about with paint this time. So a bit of textured paint and mixed the colours, and then I added additional tufts, as you can see here. So these can be purchased again from places like Citadel or the Army Painter. They've all got, they're like bronze wee tufts like that. I'll show you. Midland Tufts, so these are more like greener, lusher ones. So this is where I get the tufts for like my marines that I've used, but I've also just recently gone and purchased the Army Painters version, which is Deadland Tufts. So they're more like a grey, dead looking plant, which I'm hoping to use on my Tau today. So I'll show you that, how that looks effects wise as well. Again, just another example of textured paint. Leaving it to dry, putting on some tufts, and then just going back and painting some stuff. Now I didn't wash this one, I painted it and then did some dry brushes to actually highlight some of the peaks on there because it's a larger scale model. And again, just rimming them all with the Abaddon black at the end to make sure it's all kind of just looking great when it's sitting on the shelf. So it's easy techniques to do. And last but not least, I do just love bringing this model out to showcase it. This one I went all out. I wanted it to look really exotic and lush, the base. So I used a couple of different paints on here to give like a water effect. I stuck on some gems that I had myself lying around. That one's kind of coming off there, I need to re-glue that. Just to add effect, and in with the grass, just again to make it look more lush, like special, like just to give it a different feel. As you can see, it just kind of adds to the shine, the gloss on it. It makes it look good. It finishes off this model. Again, there was a lot of work went into this model, so I was nervous about doing the base, but I just decided to go all out. I went all out with the orange and the blue anyway, so what the hell, I just went for it. And that's that one. Ooh, knocking models again. So that gives you an idea of the kinds of things you can do when it comes to bases and experiments that you can do. I'll show you some of the base paints I have now to give you an idea of what I mean. So here I've got a range of Citadel technical paints, and technical paints is really just a term correlating to the fact it's a paint that will do something a bit extra rather than just allow you to paint. So the technical Stirling Mud, for example, was one that I used on the bases of like my Marines and the Predator, that kind of things. And if you can see inside, notice how the consistency of it is like, this isn't shaking very well, but it'll be like more gritty, grainy, So basically when it dries it will set like that to give the effect of like a mud effect effectively. That's why it's now named Stirling Mud, I'm sure. Again, you've got like the technical Martian iron earth. So this is, you can't see it in here, but it just looks like an ordinary paint, but this is the one once you paint it on and it dries, it will give the crack effect that it had with like my Necron bases, so you could see like with the scarabs. So that's what that one's for. Technical Agrilion earth, I think. Sometimes the names here are a bit challenging. Again, this one looks quite smooth, but it does dry like a more dusty effect once you put it on properly as well. We've got the Armageddon Dust. It's another favourite one I like using. It's similar to the Stirling Mud, but it's a finer one. So again, it gives like a gritty effect. If you want to give like a textured effect on your bases, this one dries really well and makes it really easy for painting to whatever colour you would like as well. And last but not least, another example of technical paint, even though it's not for bases, is the Hexwraith Flame. So again, for particularly like Necrons for example, this is the kind of paint you would put on like your orbs to make them look extra glowy. So just to highlight, you know, the term technical paint means it's a paint that does something a wee bit extra versus your standard base paints or shade paints or layer paints. So I hope that makes sense. So some other basic materials you can incorporate. I've just bought this, so again I'm hoping to use this in my towel today to showcase it. But it's like Brown Battleground by the Army Painters. Again, it's just grainy stuff that you can do the similar technique with the PVA glue in the tub to dip the base of your models in there. And once it dries you can then set it to what you like. It's just to give texture on models, so this will come in really handy for me I think for a lot of my models, rather than having to rely on some of the textured paint, the technical paint. Other basic materials, you can get like big chunks of plastic. I mean, you can buy these effectively to like put on your models, so you would just use these like additional appendages on your bases and then paint them and customize them to what you need, like tiny parts there. Some people get ultra experimental with broken bits of sprue and things and use that. I've also seen you can buy like tiny little skulls or crushed little helmets and things. Just it depends what kind of base you're looking for your particular model, what kind of faction you're doing, and what kind of theme you're hoping to go for, or what chapter you're doing. But things like these grass tufts and that, I think they're really good and really effective for just adding those little tiny finishing touches to your models. So I'll try out some of this now and showcase it for you guys to give you an idea of the process. So what I've done is I've just poured some of the contents of this into my tub to use for basing, and I'm going to put some PVA glue on the base of these towel drones, and I hope that they'll all, ooh, we're gushing out air, maybe get a toothpick to smooth that out. Toothpicks are exceptionally handy. You could use a brush of course, whatever you like, to just try and distribute the glue quite evenly to get it to stick. So if you can see, I've just put some PVA glue on there, smooth it out to where I want it to be for covering the base, and then I'm going to dip this in here. Shake off any excess and then effectively leave that to dry. So I'm going to do that for each of my towel drones here. you finish doing your base, and obviously you want to preserve anything that you have left, hence why the tubs are super handy. So I'm just going to pop all those materials back in there. So this tub should last me a fair while, as long as my kiddie pops don't get access to it, for example. You need to keep it somewhere safe. So what I'm going to do now here is just finish off by adding a couple of little details, little tufts onto this as well. For this I prefer to use actual plastic glue as opposed to the PVA glue to make it stick. You could use super glue or that as well, I guess, to get it in place. I've got a wee bit of this left here, so I'm just going to use this to dab on, and hopefully it should still stick to the model. So just find the location that you want your tuft to go on, dab on your glue, take off your tuft and place it on there like so, and then we'll just leave that to dry. And I'm going to do that for all of my towel to keep them all kind of the same kind of theme, and it just helps finish it off a little bit there. So yeah, I hope that helps kind of give you some inspiration to do just something maybe a little bit different compared to what you're normally doing. Again, being new to the hobby, it's the kind of things that you don't pick up till you're a wee bit past that. I keep saying I'm new to the hobby, I'm like 8 months into it now, but even my desk surprises me. The amount of gear and accessories and things I have now is awesome. So yeah, there's always scope for learning, there's always scope for trying new techniques. I highly encourage you to get experimental when you can, because that's the whole point of doing this hobby for me. When it comes to the painting, it's seeing what kind of effects you can get with your models, what comes out of it. So yeah, happy painting, happy exploring, happy experimentation, I should say. And thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this helps somebody that's watching it, and if, as always, if you have any questions or that, feel free to fire them my way. Thanks again for the love and support. Our YouTube subscribers are slowly but surely getting closer to that 200 mark as well, so if you haven't already, please like the video, please hit subscribe so you can keep up to date with any of our updates. We are hoping to have a giveaway in the future as well, which should be Warhammer related, so if you're into the hobby, then please stay tuned for that. Thanks again guys, and we shall catch up with you next week.